Morning, all. All right, so after a very busy day yesterday, I figured why not take a look at the standings today, right? So we had the power rankings last night. Look at the standings today. I do this every month now, and it seems to be popular, and it's a good way of looking at where everybody's at in the playoff chase. So we'll start in the East. I know I very often have the West on the left-hand side, which breaks some people, but I don't think it matters which side you have. It doesn't matter. Gary Bettman's not like calling in saying you need to stop it. So Boston still leads the East. Their lead is down to 3 points over Florida, or at least down two in terms of where it is from where it was going into yesterday's games. But over the last month, Boston 8-3, so 16 points in 11 games. They have 73 points in 52 overall. They have a 100% chance of making the playoffs, according to The Athletic. Florida also has a 100% chance of making the playoffs. They're 6-3-2 in the last month, so they've actually lost 2 points to Boston over the last month. They have 70 points in 52 games, but again, we'll see how Florida does in upcoming weeks. It does feel like they could end up winning the division. There's 30 games left. We'll see. Tampa Bay is 9 points back of Florida. They have a 78% chance of making the playoffs. They went 7-3 over the last month. 14 points in 10 games there. Kind of a rough week for them coming out of the All-Star break, but again, they look like they're in good shape to make the playoffs. 61 points in 53 games overall, but they're only 1 point clear of a couple teams behind them. They've played more games, so we'll see what happens. Then we get to the leaders of the Metro. That is the New York Rangers. Over the last month, they've played 12 games, which is tied for the most amongst any teams on this board. They went 7-4-1. They have a 99% chance of making the playoffs, again, according to The Athletic. They have 69 points in 52 games, so they're right in the mix, too, for first overall in the East. The Carolina Hurricanes are not too far behind. They went 7-3 over the last month, and so they had 14 points in 10 games. They have one game in hand on the New York Rangers. They have a 99% chance of making the playoffs as well. 65 points in 51 games, not too shabby. The Philadelphia Flyers. I think rumors of their demise have been greatly exaggerated. 62 points in 53 games overall, but over the last month in 12 games, they're 7-5. That's 14 points. They're on pace to stay in the playoffs. They've got a 53% chance of making the playoffs, again, according to The Athletic. Feels like those odds have gotten better than where they were early in the season. So Philadelphia's still converting people, I guess. The work ethic is there. That can be very tiring, yes. And so we'll see how they go the rest of the season. But right now, they are 6 points clear of fourth place in the division. Now, they're not that far clear of Toronto or Detroit. But of course, those aren't division rivals, so they can't technically pass Philadelphia. So the Toronto Maple Leafs, 50 games, 26-16-8, 60 points. Looks good. However, over the last month, they've been trending in the wrong direction. They're 5-6 in 11 games, 10 points, 93% chance of making the playoffs. I think the fact that all we've been talking about over the last 12 hours is the fact that, Morgan Riley goes after Ridley Gregg when he slap shots an empty netter. I think that works to Toronto's advantage because during that game, I kept thinking to myself, how safe is Sheldon Keefe's job? If they keep backing out of the playoffs like this, how much longer can this go on before somebody has to make a change? And because they're not that far above the playoff line. They're only 4 points above a team that could potentially pass them. Now, Detroit, they've played 51 games, 27-18-6 record. They also have 60 points. But over the last month, they've been excellent. 7-2-1 for 15 points in 10 games. 39% chance of making the playoffs, according to The Athletic. They've already shown they can beat teams that we don't think they can. So I don't necessarily trust that number that much. I do think Detroit has a very good chance of making the playoffs. The New York Islanders are given a 32% chance of making the playoffs. They're 22-18-12 overall, 56 points. And over the last month, 3-6-2. And of course, they had to fire their coach to bring in Patrick Waugh. Is it too late to turn the season around under Patrick Waugh? Not really. They're only 4 points back of a playoff spot, but it's not going to be easy. They're going to have a nice little winning streak there. They're going to have to avoid the losses that have plagued them this year. And I mean, it could happen. Patrick Waugh can turn a team around as a coach. The New Jersey Devils, the team that needs to turn things around as well. They have mildly better chances of making the playoffs at 37%. So Detroit, the Islanders, may all be fighting it out for the same spot with Philadelphia, according to the model. But the New Jersey Devils have been going in the wrong direction. 4-6-1 over the last month, so 9 points in 11 games. They have 54 points in 50 games overall. But yeah, the hope is starting to fade a bit if you're Jersey. Definitely the fact that they've lost more than they've won. I mean, that's not a formula right there that's going to work. Trying not to say the things Ryan George did in his Sportscaster video yesterday, but man, was he spot on. Pittsburgh, 49 games played, 23-19-7 record, 53 points. But over the last month, they're 3-4-2, so one game below 500. But they still show us having a 61% chance of making the playoffs, which is remarkable. So it has to be a pretty easy schedule by the model for the Athletic in order to have them making up that 7-point differential for the playoffs, or the 9-point differential with Philadelphia. They have a better chance of Philadelphia making the playoffs according to the model. And then you have Washington. No such luck with Washington. They have a 5% chance of making the playoffs, even though they have the same number of points. Almost the exact same record as Pittsburgh, 23-20-7. Over the last month, they're 4-6-1, so 9 points in 11 games. Have not been trending in the right direction. And again, 5% chance of making the playoffs. Montreal, we're into the land of zeros here. Montreal, no chance of making the playoffs, again, according to The Athletic. One game below NHL 500 at 21-22-8, 50 points in 51 games. Over the last month, they're 500, 4-4-2. So that's how Montreal likes it. Buffalo, they're actually one game below 500 over the last month. They're given a 1% chance of making the playoffs. There's that 1% chance that model tells you. And so, bring on so you're telling me there's a chance meme. So 22-25-4 record, 48 points in 51 games, but over the last month they're 4-5. So Buffalo has not won more than they've lost. Again, it makes it difficult to make up the distance between yourself and the playoffs when that's the case. Now, Ottawa has a 2% chance of making the playoffs, 48 games, a record of 21-25-2, 44 points. But over the last month, they've been pretty good, 7-2-2, 16 points in 11 games. So they've gained 6 points on the Leafs over the last calendar month. They're now 16 points behind Toronto, which is 6 points less than it would have been a month ago. But still, the odds of Ottawa making the playoffs, not great, 2%. But again, I think it illustrates that Ottawa's playing pretty well, and early season losses have sunk them once again. Columbus, they're 3-5-1 over the last month. They're 16-25-10 for 42 points in 51 games. They have a 0% chance of making the playoffs, which tracks. And with Columbus, I do have questions on how you fix this, because there's a good team there, but it kind of feels like it's a Rubik's Cube right now, and somebody's got to figure it out. So maybe we need somebody who was really good in the 80s to run the team. I don't know, because the Rubik's Cube was big in the 80s. It's not as big now. So that's your picture in the East. You guys can let me know which teams you think below the playoff line could push their way into the playoffs. Again, the model seems to really like Pittsburgh, and it gives New Jersey and the Islanders almost the same odds as Detroit. So, yeah, there's only 8 spots to go around. Let me know your thoughts on who you think can jump over the left-hand side of the board. Now we go west. Dallas is leading the division. And again, I'm going to say this. I know it's ad nauseum, but it still feels like they have yet to play really their game. They're 8-3-1 over the last month. Those 17 points, they made up a huge difference that they had with Winnipeg a month ago. 70 points in 52 games. They're now only 4 points behind first overall in the National Hockey League. So the top teams in the NHL are currently Vancouver, Boston, and then Dallas is tied with Florida. What is this season? Why? I'm happy. What's going to happen? So they have a 100% chance of making the playoffs, which is odd because all 3 teams that I root for have a 100% chance of making the playoffs. Again, what is this season? And for Dallas, 32-14-6 records, pretty darn good. So we'll see how far they can go. Colorado, a bit of a speed bump for them recently. They're 5-5-1 over the last month. They still show a 100% chance of making the playoffs. 32-17-4 record for 68 points in 53 games. Those are very good numbers. Now, the losing streak they're on currently, is it troubling? Sure, but get it out of the way in February so that you're playing your best game in April. Winnipeg's fallen off the pace. They're 3-5-1 over the last month, so 7 points in 9 games. They have 67 points in 50 games overall. They still show a 100% chance of making the playoffs, but if you're asking yourself, have they peaked? I'm right there. I agree. The question is a decent one to ask, whether or not they've actually peaked at this point. Then we go out to the Pacific. The Vancouver Canucks, 52 games, 34, 12, and 6 record, 74 points. Over the last month, 6, 1, and 3. So 15 points in 10 games, 100% chance of making the playoffs. So you can look at this as, well, they went 1, 1, and 1 this week, or you can look at it as, hey, they're still keeping themselves on pace with the other teams in their division, which is good because there's a couple of teams playing really well in their division, starting with Vegas. Vegas is playing well despite injuries. 31, 15, and 6 overall, 68 points. So they're 6 points behind Vancouver, same number of games played, 30 games to go. For Vegas, they're 7, 2, and 1 over their last month. So that's 15 points in 10 games for them. They have the same number of points and the same number of games as the Canucks. They have a 99% chance of making the playoffs. The Oilers also have a 99% chance of making the playoffs. In 48 games, they're 30, 17, and 1, 61 points. And over the last month, they're 8 and 2. That is 16 points in 10 games. They've gained a total of 1 point on the teams they're chasing, although they do have 4 games in hand on both Vancouver and Vegas. So outside of the top 3, we get into the wild cards, and there's LA. LA still shows an 89% chance of making the playoffs. Again, athletic modeling. 49 games played, 24, 15, and 10 record, 58 points. Now, over the last month, they've been 4, 5, and 2, so 1 game below 500. But they had the nice shutout victory last night. They've made the change behind the bench. Maybe this is a sign they're going to turn it around. St. Louis has the number 2 wild card spot. They're 27, 21, and 2, 56 points over the last month, 6, 3, and 1. So 13 points. And there's no team below the playoff line that had as many points and more than they did. There's one team that had as many, but sits 5 points back of a playoff spot. However, St. Louis is still given a 12% chance to make the playoffs. That's why I'm wearing St. Louis, because they're in the playoffs. I think they have a good chance of making it, but according to the model, they don't. So I might as well wear Blues. Nashville, 52 games, 27, 23, and 2 record, 56 points. They've been 500 over the last month, 5, 5, and 1. They have a 34% chance of making the playoffs. So it is going to be interesting to see if, a tougher schedule for St. Louis causes them to drop way off or not. That's the projection, but again, until the games are played, you don't really know. Calgary, their hopes look better than they did a couple weeks ago. So they're 25, 22, and 5, 55 points in 52 games, but over the last month they are 6 and 4. So 12 points in 10 games, but keep in mind that only gains 2 points on LA. And it is 1 point less than St. Louis got over the last month. But again, a 37% chance for Calgary. So of the teams on this side of the board, Calgary is the best chance of moving over to this side, but we'll see how it all turns out. Seattle has an 11% chance of making the playoffs. 51 games, 21, 20, and 10 record, 52 points, but over the last month, it's been tough, 3, 6, and 1, so 7 points in 10 games. That's not trending in the right direction, and yeah, they're very likely not going to make it. Minnesota's right there with them, 23, 23, and 5, 51 points, so 1 point back of Seattle, but they have a 17% chance of making the playoffs. And over the last month, they're 6, 4, and 1, so 13 points in 11 games. Again, same number of points as St. Louis. 3 more points than LA. So when you look at it this way, if they can keep gaining points on that at that pace, you would catch LA by the end of the year, almost. Close. Because we got 2 months left, they're 7 points back, so it's close. And this is where it gets awesome, because hopefully down the stretch we see some great runs and some uncertainty as to who's going to or not going to make the playoffs. It's always more exciting that way. Arizona, 50 games, they're 500 as well. 23, 23, and 4, 50 points. So they have almost the exact same record as Minnesota, but the model has them falling out. 2% is their chance of making the playoffs. 3, 5, and 2 over the last month. So after some really strong numbers early in the season, Arizona's taken that decline. But again, I think a 500 record is decent, and it's a sign that things are getting better with the on-ice product with the Coyotes. Anaheim, 51 games, 18, 31, and 2 record, 38 points, and this is the first of the 3 0%ers in the West. Over the last month, 4, 5, and 1. I watched one of those games live. They won that game, so Anaheim's got a perfect record when I watched them live. Just throwing that out there because, hey, if they want to throw me season tickets, it might be a tough commute, but hey. But yeah, 4, 5, and 1 over the last month isn't bad. San Jose's been decent over the last month too. 4, 3, and 2 for 11 points in 9 games, but they have 33 points in 51 games overall. Clearly not going to make the playoffs. They're currently 28 points back. And then 30 points back of a playoff spot sits the Chicago Blackhawks. They've played 52 games, a 14-35-3 record. And over the last month, they're 2-7-1. So 5 points. That is the lowest number of points of any team in the NHL. So Chicago, right now the worst team in the league, and a 0% chance of making the playoffs. And that means they might have the best odds of winning the draft lottery, which everybody will be completely rational and understand that if they win it, that they Anyways, we'll see what happens then. So let me know your thoughts regarding the standings. Which teams do you think are in a playoff spot that are in danger? Which teams that are outside of a playoff spot do you think have a chance of getting in there? Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you haven't already. I forgive you, but you can do that now. Thanks again for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.